The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we'll review Austin's 2-0 victory on the road in Nashville, and we'll preview the upcoming Vancouver match this weekend at home and all of the other Austin FC news of the week. My name is Landon, and I'm joined as always by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremiah Bentley, and I'm happy to be back at my own house and doing this show again. And one thing that I think is very amusing to me that not everybody sees. I love watching you look at the script for the Hello Friends, and thanks for listening to our soccer part of this, since we've done it hundreds of times. But also, I often need to read my own name, so I get it.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing how I will recap a goal from memory at times, but can't remember this thing that I literally say every week. I will, however, peek behind the curtain for listeners. We just had a recording crash, and the first time we did this, I said joined once again by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley. That one, I won't take blame for it. I'm going to blame that one on you for being gone so much, and I got used to you being once again in a hotel or once again back from vacation or something like that.
That's fair. So the other thing we did is I was talking about how most made-up holidays are terrible because like every day of the year there's something that has no meaning. But today is international, I believe, Dog Day, and I think that's one we should all celebrate because we both love our dogs. So did you do anything for Tito today for National Dog Day?
I didn't know it was International Dog Day, but people listening won't be able to see this, but a lovely portrait of my dog sitting in a field of bluebonnets that my parents took and gave to us. But I treat every day like it's International Dog Day.
That's fair. We do the same. My dogs are running around and barking and eating table scraps and living their best lives, as they always do, which every once in a while I wonder if people are going to hear. Like the moment that I stopped talking, I heard two of them barking. And you wanted to talk about the high-quality MLS fantasy product, I believe related to the our fantasy league among the various podcasts and soccer interests around Austin, and what that has led to for you and for our team.
That's right. It's the Best Ball Fantasy League for Austin FC podcasts, hosted and managed by the North End boys. We did our transfer window update draft, and so we got to drop players and pick up new players. Jeremiah was on the road for work, and so I did this one on my own. I think you picked the initial team on your own, and then I did this secondary draft on my own. And I went online to check how our new boys did over the weekend, because I did pick a couple of guys who were new to the league, and went on there and noticed that one of them is not even added to the fantasy game on the MLS website yet. And it's not this is not like a supplemental roster player. It's the new starting center back for FC Cincinnati. So a starter for one of the best players, for one of the best teams in the league, is just not in the game. I'll leave out the fact that he got 1 point this weekend in his 82-minute stint, but this league has made leaps and bounds, but there's still some things about it that are just a little bit embarrassing, and the fantasy game is one of them.
It's a little bit. That's fair. Well, hey, Austin won a game this week. We should probably talk about that.
They did win a game. We talked about last week how important this one would be, just because it's a tough schedule from here to the end of the season. This is a road game, but a road game against a team who hasn't been that good, who's been in a bad run of form lately. And we said, if they're going to win any of them, if you're looking at the slate of games ahead of them, this is one that you'll want to win. They did it. And so I don't think this was a great Austin FC game. I think the first half was, we'll get into some of the wild stuff that happened, but I think Austin was probably the worst team overall in the first half. But there's some positives we can take away from it, both in the style of play, and then also sometimes I think it's not our job to say a game was better or worse than what it was. The idea of what we're doing is just to say what happened and kind of analyze what and how, right? In a game like this, I think you just say it wasn't a great game. There's some positives to take away, and then just thank the Lord that Brad Stuver is our goalkeeper.
Oh, man, yeah. There's no doubt about that. I mean, and I think the absolute, and we're going to debate whether this was the best save of the night, but like the biggest moment of the night in terms of game state and game flow has to be Brad Stuver's save of the Henny Mokhtar penalty 7 minutes into the game after a penalty 1 minute into the match, or it's a very different story on the night.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Josh Wolf loves to say, goals change games, and a goal a minute and a half into the game definitely changes the game. And so, I won't argue with you there. I will. I'm not going to say maybe. I'm not even going to tease it like that. I am going to argue with you once we get to this other save. But as far as importance on the match, this one was absolutely bigger.
Yeah, so he has this huge save early, 7 total saves on the night, leading to his 7th clean sheet on the year. Team of the match again for the 3rd time. I think there's no doubt that Austin is in better shape than it could be otherwise, except for Brad Stuver, who continues to lead league in saves. So it's just he continues to really lead the club. And I mean, it's unfortunate that he doesn't get more notoriety from like the league and maybe even the national team than he does right now because of sort of like the way Austin's playing. But it's great to know, like as an Austin fan, that we've got that super reliable, trustworthy like guy at the back line that can help Austin save itself from itself often.
Yeah, absolutely. One other confusing stat. I'll state what the stat is, then break down what it actually means. So it's post-shot XG minus goals allowed. So if you take the total XG of shots on goal and then subtract the number of goals that were actually allowed, this is by most like analytics folks considered the best way to, like the best statistic or metric to say how good of a shot stopper is this goalkeeper. Brad Stuver has been one of the best in this metric pretty much all 4 years of Austin FC's existence. And in this game, it was 2, meaning he essentially stopped 2 whole goals from going in over the span of this game. Most of those numbers coming off of 2 shots, but they were a big 2 shots and then a few other pretty big moments as well.
Yeah, and I guess before we move off Brad Stuver, just early on in the show, I was just reminded, because I just bought tickets for it, is that he's going to have his Stuver social at the pitch on Sunday, September 8th from 3 to 6, which I think, have you been to that before? Jackson and I have been at least once. Yeah, it's a fundraiser at the pitch. It's for Equality Texas and Avow. Tickets are $30. Then also, if you want to pay an extra $50, you can like take a shot at Stuver, which is super fun. And he does a really good job of like finding the very serious guys who think they're going to score on him and stopping them, and then like also letting the 2-year-old kids like hammer home goals on him. It's like a super fun event and good to watch. So if you get the chance, like go check that out. Moving on to the offensive side of things, we talked about Driussi at the false 9 against LA, and it may be working and not working both at the same time. The tactics, the lineup was the same. I feel like maybe the tactics were a little bit different. So why don't you run us through that?
Yeah, I think the Nashville game was more or less a continuance of what they were trying to do against LAFC. It seems a bit more fully formed in this Nashville game, and it's going to be very difficult to kind of explain without any visuals in this audio medium exactly what was going on. But a thing, we watched this game live at some friend's house, and I was being mocked by the end of the night, partially because John Gallagher scored. But the other things I was being mocked for were I kept yelling at the screen every time Mikael Dessler or Biru were playing in the midfield. And then also kept calling Mikael Dessler my boyfriend because how much I am in love with the way he plays soccer. But yeah, them rotating in the midfield. So this is like the most total football Austin has ever done and most MLS teams have ever done. The fact that Austin's still not that good and maybe doesn't have the pieces to totally pull it off, they're probably not going to get that much attention for it. But I can't stop thinking about it just because of how much fun this is. So you would have moments where Guilherme Biru, anytime he received the ball wide, he would either dribble inside or he would pass the ball and then do an underlapping run to the inside. And so very often he would end up either like pushing up field inside, but then also if the ball got played backwards, he would just stay there. He would stay in the middle of the field, and it would almost be a double pivot of Dani Pereira and Guilherme Biru, or sometimes Dani would drop back in between the center backs, and it would be a double pivot of Mikhail Dessler and Guilherme Biru. And so that was super cool. But then another thing that was more difficult to see on this broadcast, and I'm very excited to see in person at Q2 whenever you get the full picture, is what was happening around that. So as Biru would come inside, oftentimes Owen Wolf would push out wide to that left-hand side and occupy the space where normally a fullback would be in the build-up. And then Driussi would drop in, that like false nine drop into midfield. And whenever that would happen, the opposite attacking midfielder would run in behind and essentially become the number 9 there. And so there's these really interesting little rotations going on. And like, again, you can't see it super well in the Nashville game, but folks listening, like, watch for this at Q2 on Saturday, because it's really interesting. And it sounds complicated and maybe sounds like too complicated, but it's one of those things, if you kind of drill the basics of it and have players who are good enough and just have the instincts to play like this, it's actually quite simple. If somebody vacates a space, somebody else needs to fill that space. And so there's like areas of the field or positions that need, like, you want to be occupied at all times. And as someone moves into one space, someone else fills it. And it was just, they looked really comfortable doing it. And then I saw Kevin Morris posting about like what this system can look like with actual good players, and posted a screenshot of Guilherme Biru playing in midfield. And the reason like why that is important is because imagine putting Jean Kolmanich or Nick Lima playing in that space, receiving in the midfield with pressure around him on the half turn, turning and dribbling at a guy or doing something like that. Like, it just doesn't work. You have to have a specific kind of player to be able to do that. Biru is that player. Dessler is that player. And so all of that, like, I am very excited to see what this can turn into, not just this season, but going forward, to see with a few more upgrades at a few other spots, to see what this team can do. And I know I've said that I would like to replace Josh Wolf in the offseason. If that happens, I hope whoever comes in keeps doing fun stuff like this, because I will always think like, what if they kind of go in a different direction and we don't get to see this weird fun thing where fullbacks are midfielders and midfielders are wingers and strikers are like, I don't know. It's just like very exciting to me what this could look like with one more window of a Burrell rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I was trying to think about a question, but I think ultimately, like, what you're saying is it comes down to having the guys that can actually do this and make this system work, and finally getting the talent that's like acclimated to it, which maybe Austin didn't have before. So, like, how much of that do you think is like a system? Well, I mean, I guess they depend on each other. How much of it is like guys that know how to play soccer in an insightful way, and how much of that is it like a system?
Yes.
Or are they so intertwined it doesn't matter?
Yes, it's both. Because, like, again, if you tell Nick Lima to go into the midfield, it doesn't matter, because if you play the ball to him, he's not going to be able to do anything with it there. And so, and then also it's like, you can teach the system to someone who doesn't have the instincts for it, and they're probably going to do a bad job. But whenever you have this system and have guys who are like, oh no, yeah, that makes sense to me, and then they just go out and do it, like, because as much as we talk about Alex Ring and like what he is and isn't, but he is smart and has good instincts. And so him moving in these spaces around Dessler and around Biru and around Bukari, who's also from the small sample size, seems to be a pretty intelligent soccer player as far as just like the game IQ of it. And so just seeing these guys just follow their instincts within this system is, it's not all the way there yet. It's not perfect. We're not the best team in the world. We're not going to go undefeated for the rest of the year, but there's these little sprigs of hope coming up, and like something that could turn into something really good.
All right, well, let's take a break, and then we'll get into the details of this match and go from there.
When no one is around.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community, transparency, and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm, and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with zero overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking accounts help you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back to cover the rest of the Nashville game. Jeremiah, let's jump into some of the pregame narrative here.
Yeah, there's a couple of them here. You know, one is Austin is coming back from a long break again, which is a thing that Austin has not always seemed great at. So there's a little bit of a question about how this club returns to form after a little bit of a break after Leagues Cup. And then the other ones are just roster related. So Josh, during the pre-match press conference, mentioned that for the first time, we've teased this, that this was going to happen, but basically for the first time that we're going to have a player not make the bench who always makes the bench or maybe makes the starting lineup with a club at full strength. So there was a lot of speculation around that. And then also we heard that because of acclimation to the heat, that Svatak was still not quite ready to go, although I think he was pretty firm on the fact that he felt like he would be ready to go for Vancouver. So it felt like there's one more match here and then he'll be ready to go again. And so that was the speculation, is like, so who's not going to make the 20 this week? And I was a little bit surprised by who that turned out to be.
Yeah, me too. Like, yeah, it was like, okay, we haven't had that many players, period. So I was thinking like, okay, Hector Jimenez isn't going to make the bench, and then maybe one other person who like doesn't play that much. But Julio Cascante not being on the bench is pretty significant to me. Just a guy who throughout his career at Austin FC, if he's been healthy and in town, he's started almost every game that's been true. And so the fact that he not only didn't start, but didn't even travel, like didn't make the game day 20, like that's wild. The other one being John Kolmanich. I guess that's less surprising, but still a little bit. Like they just re-signed the guy. They just extended his contract. So to leave him off, it's not nothing.
Yeah, and he has a haircut that made him seem, that looks like he thought that he was going to be playing with like the elaborate cornrows, whatever he has.
Maybe that's why they left him home.
Maybe he hated his hair so bad they cut him out. All right, so we end up with, in the lineup wise, and we kind of touched on the only thing that's a little bit different, or a little bit maybe surprising. So we get Stuver, Biederu, Heinzek, Hedges, Dessler, which feels like the locked in like back five for sure. Put at our Ring and Wolf in the midfield, and then Gallagher, Driussi, and Bukari up top. And we talked a little bit about Driussi up top, but like not in depth. So is this just with the way they play? Is like are Rubio or Zardes just not fast enough to keep up with his style, or like what? Like why do you think this is an ongoing thing, or is this just like a horses for courses kind of move to have Driussi in the middle up top?
This seems like a selection for the game model that they're trying to play. So Driussi was dropping in deep more often than not. Occasionally he would still be on that front line occupying that number 9 position, but more often than not, as they played to one side, one attacking midfielder would pull wide to the sideline. Driussi would drop into where you would expect like a number 10 to be, and then the backside midfielder would fill the space in behind where you would expect a number 9 to be. And so in this regard, like I don't have that much beef with like the strategy of it. I don't know that it always worked out as well as we maybe needed it to, but honestly, like in the way they were playing the other night, you could argue lots of things that there's a way you could play with a real striker there that would have been more beneficial. But the way they actually played against Nashville, I honestly think like maybe a more striker-like midfielder filling in behind him would have been more useful there. But we don't have guys who can do both of those things. You know what I mean? Like we don't have Chicho Arango or Cucho Hernandez who can play both of those roles and do that kind of thing. And so for that game model, I don't think either of our strikers would have been better than what Driussi was. And again, I'm not arguing that that's like the right thing or the best thing to win games with this team, but for that specific role that Driussi was asked to play, he was the best guy in the team to do it.
Yeah, that's fair. We got that. I guess we didn't talk about this. Like Matt Bersano's out with a leg injury, but I feel like that's probably not okay. It's a thing. It doesn't really matter to anybody. So let's just kind of go into we'll go through the game events, and then we can kind of talk through maybe the stats that lead up to that. But we sort of mentioned this, like the first opportunity for a game-changing goal happens very early. And it's on a yellow on Brendan Hines-Ike that leads to a PK that was originally not called on the field, but was called upon review. But do you have a problem with that?
No. So this is on a goal kick. Stuver boots it long. It turns quickly into a transition moment for Nashville, which this has happened to Austin on a few occasions. That I think that's something they really need to sort out, where a goal kick is an opportunity to kind of seize field position and get the ball further up the field and kind of set your line. And Austin, on I'd say 4 or 5 different moments throughout this season, the opponent has turned that into a counterattacking opportunity, which is the opposite of what you're trying to do. Like you're setting that line so you can take the field, but if you give the ball away or don't stop them as soon as you do give it away, you get an instance like this where Mukhtar plays a really nice ball in behind for Schaffelberg, and Schaffelberg's got some speed on him. So he's in behind on his own. Hines-Ike makes a sliding tackle on the inline to prevent the cross, and Schaffelberg goes down. Like you said, it wasn't called immediately, but on like the second replay, I was like, they're absolutely going to give this as a pin. There's no way they can't. But yeah, he takes out that one leg, and you can see him clearly go down. You can see the way the ball is rolling, that if there's any kind of touch from Hines-Ike, you'd be able to see the change in the spin pattern on the ball. Doesn't happen. It never changes course. Not a touch on it at all. So yeah, I'm not surprised this was called, and I think it should have been.
Yeah, this is one where to your point, like if he slid at the ball and just missed for whatever reason, which then leads to the PK, and I appreciate Mukhtar didn't do a lot of dramatic run up to that. Like it was a little bit of a Driussi like confidence style, like make a shot at the goal and like trust it's going to go in. And Brad Stuver also reads it correctly and makes a strong push to like push it into the post. But it's like the width of a hair from it working out like that. He could have easily pushed it into the side post and it could have gone in. Maybe it goes all the way out. But I mean, it's great reaction save from him.
Yeah, really impressive save. So he does guess right. So Stuver, I was watching the replay to see if Stuver did anything to send Mukhtar that way, but because Stuver takes a little like juke step to the left before he dives right, but Mukhtar never looks at him. He like had his spot picked out, and they showed the little graphic on the screen of where his penalties have been, and I think Stuver had done his homework because most of Mukhtar's penalties were to the side that Stuver dove. And a few of them were like the exact place where Stuver dove and where he saved it. And so I think he just made an educated guess. I'm going this way. But even then, it's not easy. Like you guess the right way. Sometimes that's enough for the penalty save to be easy. Mukhtar hits it hard. And if you've ever had a ball hit at you, if you've ever like been thrown in goal for pickup soccer or whatever, you know that like just touching the ball is not enough. You have to do a lot more than that. And so for him to get both hands on it, push it away, like it's an impressive save. It was really well done by Brad Stuver here just to get it onto that post.
All right, well, I think. Do you have any other saves, or are we going to talk about this like weird Yaspek moment?
There's
Is there anything
one
else you wanted to get into before
Austin
that?
moment I wanted to bring up before. So in the 16th minute, I think Heinz Ike plays a ball over the top for Bukari. The keeper comes off his line and heads it out just because it's kind of in no man's land. And Ring tries a first time worldie from deep, but he just hits it straight at the keeper again. But I mean, I like seeing that ball to Bukari. They very much looking for that like out to in run in behind. And yeah, I mean, they're clearly looking for it, and it's on sometimes. So yeah, I liked seeing that early in the game. But yeah, let's get on to this weird moment. It's like 30th minute ish. What happened here?
So the Yaspek, the Australian U22 is playing his first match, who we talked about last week, says something which seems to set off. And set off is like maybe a broad term, like a overly dramatic term, but it's Owen and Danny probably first. Danny and Owen react to what he has to say, and then we get like a long stoppage in play that I don't think anybody understood in the moment, but then we later get like a statement from Nashville. We still don't know what it actually is, right? We get a statement from Nashville about it. I think Josh Wolf talked about it, but like nobody knows what actually happened in this moment.
It seems, including the players. So there's a moment where the ref calls the captains over. So he's talking to Zimmerman and Ring. And I was trying to do amateur lip reading here, but he tells Ring the number of the players. His number, I can't remember what number he was, number 14 or whatever, said something, blah, blah, blah. And Ring turns around and starts looking at his own players, like trying to find number 14. He's like, we don't have a number 14. And he turned back and said,
Diego Rubio do?
He said,
yeah.
On their team? And the ref was like, yeah. And he's like, oh. And then his like body language changed a little bit. And he's like, okay, I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, no players seemed upset about it. Like they brought it over to the coaches. They end up making the sub and bringing on Perez, who's one of the other of the two signings they made in this transfer window. And he, like, Perez ends up having a good game, but Yazbek was having a really good game at that point. And so it definitely disrupted them a little bit and changed like the type of player they had on the field in that position.
Yeah. And I guess we didn't talk about this, but this is the first league game where Alex Ring is the captain, right? It's like, is that since the changes made? Weren't they all Leagues Cup, or was it? I don't remember.
He's been captain before, but maybe the first time where Driussi's on the field.
Oh, true. I think that's what it is. First time where Driussi's on the field. So now I feel like this is unofficially the official switch in terms of who the Austin FC captain is that we'll never read anything about. But, I mean, it does almost lead to a goal almost immediately after that moment. So, like, let's talk through this play, because I felt like it should have been a goal, and it was dumb that Austin didn't get one out of this.
Yeah, that moment I talked about in the 16th minute, it's a very similar ball where Heinz Ike is looking for that out to in run for Bukari in behind. It's taking some kind of awkward bounces in the area. Bukari goes in. I can't remember. Do you remember that center back's name? I can't remember who it was, but the not Walker Zimmerman center back. He's going in. There's a bit of a tussle in the box with him trying to box out Bukari. Bukari gets a toe on it. It bounces over to Driussi, and he megs the keeper and finishes it. It looked like this is where I feel like they should have some more specific hand gestures for the referees in soccer, where for a goal, you point at the center spot. But if there's a foul in that same area, you're going to point the other direction, which makes it look like you're pointing to the center spot. And so he blows the whistle and points in a direction. I think, okay, they gave the goal. We're good. And then they come back. He's like, no, this is a foul. We're going the other way. And on the replay, they're looking for offside from Bukari. Absolutely not offside. He's on pretty cleanly. So they ended up, I think it was a foul on Bukari in this little tussle. But, I mean, I can see it being called, but it feels a little harsh for how it happens, where the defender is initiating contact, trying to box him out, and then ends up going down on not super aggressive contact from Bukari. So, like, I get it, but, I mean, it feels harsh.
It did. Yeah, it did. Luckily, it didn't have too much of an impact on the game because it was just a few minutes later when Austin did finally pick up the first goal. And I feel like maybe you kind of touched on this, but what we're getting out of maybe it's style of play, but like we're getting the best of Alex Ring, probably the best of Alex Ring since 2022, like in the last couple of years, for sure. And I think this pass that he has to John Gallagher here after what is it, Beetroot that starts his play?
Dessler plays the ball to Ring.
Example of that.
So Dessler
that's right,
receives the ball wide, and then it's that near sideline run as the ball comes to one side. The attacking midfielder would often make a run to the sideline, and so Ring does that, receives the ball, and then turns upfield and kind of rides a tackle and was able to push past Brian Anunga. And Shaq Moore, their right back, had just made a big run that ended with him like leaning on the ad boards behind Brad Stuver's goal. So he's still working his way back to get into position and is a little bit breathy doing so. But Nashville's backline doesn't really adjust. Their positioning is as if they have a right back there. Nobody rotates back and covers for Shaq Moore. And so as Ring beats Anunga there, Nashville's in big trouble. And John Gallagher sees the Shaq Moore-shaped hole in their back line and just charges it and is running into that space. Alex Ring picks his head up, sees it, and just it's a nice through ball, but it's simple because there's nobody on the other side. So all he has to do is kind of bend it around Walker Zimmerman there into space. Gallagher runs onto it, takes one touch, hits it with his left foot, and I think Meg's the keeper. I think it gets a little bit of a touch on the keeper's foot, but I think it went in between his legs before it went into the goal. And then if you look at the Bukari on the right side, so Zimmerman is trying to hold an offside line on Gallagher, which he didn't. Even if Zimmerman were the last man, Gallagher's still on. But two of the near side defenders are both like 4 yards past him because I think they're scared of Bukari running up that right side. They know, like, if we don't start sprinting now, we're not catching this guy. And so it just opens up an even bigger gap, and just the big hole for Gallagher to run into is just enormous, and Ring puts it right in front of him.
Yeah, this is the beauty of having the speed, whether he's on the play or not. And then is this the point where you apologize about John Gallagher, or do you feel like you did it like sufficiently enough in the opening of the show?
Jeremiah, I feel like anything I say is only going to dig a hole deeper because I still don't think anything differently about him. What I'm seeing
you're whispering to everybody, just so you know.
What I'll say is, like, I'm glad he's scoring a bunch of goals and doing really well. Like, that's great. If they're going to play him, I'm glad that they are finding ways to use what he's good at. And a moment like that is what John Gallagher is good at. Getting him around the edge into space is where he shines. Like, he's good in that moment. Where he's bad is when we're facing a packed defense trying to play with the ball through them. Like, that's where I hate having him in those moments. But we've kind of just been avoiding those moments and, like, keeping him out of those situations. So if that's how we continue to play, if we continue creating opportunities for John Gallagher to shine, play him every minute. Do it. I don't care.
But it seems like unlikely that we're never going to face that again. And I think a lot of it comes down to, like, the style of play of the other team. So we get to half. It's 1-0. Although I don't remember specifically. I think the momentum chart, I feel like still favored Nashville a lot in the first half. But
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. And a lot of it's, again, we've talked about this I think at least twice. Like, a lot of it's on Brad Stuver, and he would have another moment early in the second half to go ahead and continue bailing Austin out.
Yeah, this shot in the 55th minute, this is the one that I'm calling the save of the game. As far as the like ability it took, like the skill it took to keep it out of the back of the net, I think this one is much more difficult than the penalty save. It's from a Nashville corner. It gets headed out by Austin. It falls to Brian Anunga at the top of the box. He takes one touch and just smashes it, like hits a pile driver at Brad Stuver's goal. Brad's full extension out to his left, one arm extended, and it hits him like mid forearm. And again, just like if you've ever had a shot hit at you at any level, you know that like it's much more difficult to keep it, to like send a ball not into the net. It's so hard if there's any amount of power on it. And this is a large professional athlete hitting it about as hard as you can. Stuver, full extension, one arm, keeps it out of the goal. This is amazing. Like, goalkeepers, sound off. Let me know if you agree with me that this one is more impressive. We got Dennis who plays in the same rec league as me. I'm gonna tag him tomorrow and get his opinion on it and see which one he liked better. But yeah, goalkeepers, get at us and let us know which one is more impressive. I'm voting for this one in the 55th minute.
Yeah, beyond there, we don't have a lot of moments. There's not a lot of shots. I mean, I think Nashville stays on the ball a lot until later in the game. Then at 82, we get Valencia and Zardes on for Pereira and Wolf. So a little bit of a, I don't know, it shifts the shape around a lot. It seems like a very sensible ahead 1-0, not wanting to like bunker. It's not quite a like for like, but it's a very like strategic, a very tactical substitution. And do you think that contributes to the next goal, or is the next goal just all Osman Bukari creating his own luck, which he can do?
Yeah, it's Nashville have a bunch of numbers thrown forward. It's the game's getting late. They know they need to push to get the goal at this point. So their center backs are well past midfield. I think Walker Zimmerman has it beyond like the edge of the center circle in their attacking half. He drops a ball back to the other center back, again, whose name I can't remember. And he takes just like a slightly heavy touch, and I think underestimates how fast Bukari closes him down. And so that little bit of a heavy touch, Bukari's able to get there, pokes it past him, and once it's into space, like nobody's beating him to that ball. And so it's into space. It's the keeper and Bukari racing to the ball. And I just want to read Bukari's quote from the press conference after the game at this point, because I think I just like imagining him saying it for his first MLS goal. It's like pretty beautiful. He says, "Okay, this ball, I have to finish it because I'm faster than the goalkeeper. So I have to be there and finish it because that's what I can do. I have to use my speed and finish the game because it was 1-0. So if I score, then it's finished. It's done." So that's what was in my head. I was like, go all out and finish the ball. And like, that's just amazing that he's like had the clarity to say like, no, this is what was going on. I calculated everything that was there and like visualized it and then executed it perfectly. So I don't, maybe the keeper shouldn't have come off the line, but once again, underestimating how fast Osman Bukari is and doesn't get there. Once he takes that touch around, there's a few defenders sprinting back towards goal. And he goes on in this quote to say, like, I knew those defenders were there, and so I didn't want to take another touch and risk them getting into the goal mouth. And so I just hit it from outside the 18, knowing that was going to be my best chance. So really good awareness from Bukari there. Like, you see the physical attributes that lead to it, but just good game reading and good awareness to say, like, I got to take it now. Like, this is my last chance. And then to finish it like that. That's really great. And like, glad to see him get that first goal, celebrate with the teammates. You can still see that everyone was so happy for him to get that goal.
Yeah. And it was, I read that quote and then like I went back and watched it today, and just knowing that he picked the exact right moment. It's not like a great shot, right? It's just like a shot on target at the moment when he knows it's going to go in because nobody else has managed to recovered. Yeah. And then everybody,
which is part of the reading, like, because one more touch forward and it has to be a great shot, right?
Yeah.
So like taking it from where he does, it doesn't have to be great. It just needs to be functional, serviceable shot at the goal, and it's in.
Yeah, he does that. And then as a home fan, I kind of love that he's like, this was amazing. It only could have been better if like it was scored at Q2. And I cannot wait for his first goal at home. I feel like the place will explode. Oh
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the end of it though, right? Like Nashville, I think, has a couple of other half chances, and they're throwing numbers forward, but nothing that ever really scares Austin, and definitely not doing it twice. And Driussi attempts a Rabona shot inside the box in the 87th minute to kind of close the game out.
Which is great. It's a very Driussi kind of thing to do, right?
Any individuals that we haven't mentioned already that you want to talk about?
I mean, Dessler and Bukari both are amazing. And maybe you understood more than a lot of people what they were going to be like. And I'm just like, these guys seem better than what they're replacing, but it's just like a otherworldly upgrade in quality. And it really leads me to believe that maybe Roto knows what he's doing. Maybe there's a lot more of these, like, I mean, I never heard of either of these guys before they were linked to Austin. So and there's a lot of players out there that can make this team better. And it makes me feel like his scouting network and his skills maybe does give Austin a competitive advantage against other teams for the time being and getting players out of Europe, because it clearly, if this is not a fluke, like these guys are just like miles above what you might be able to expect to get for what Austin paid for them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the price is huge. We talk about this all the time, like the relative amount of money you're spending on them to what they're giving to the team. These guys are bringing a lot to this team right now and are relatively cheap. We don't know Dessler's numbers yet, but we're expecting them to be fairly low, especially since we got him on a free. But yeah, Dessler was huge. Austin FC Communications Twitter posted his stats for the game, which were he won 8 out of 8 duels, had a game high 5 tackles, had 2 interceptions, and then had some like pretty key interventions throughout the night, not to mention how much he did as far as like keeping the ball in the build-up, recycling in moments of pressure, and like allowing Austin to continue to play and to pull defenders out of the shape and then move into the midfield. Like he's just such a smart player. And then once he does get into these moments, has like the skill and wherewithal to pull off pretty much anything he's trying to do out there. And then Biro seems like unlocked. Like he's still maybe ends up a bit out of position defensively at times, but we've said this before, like you'll take that. What he gives you going forward, the like just soccer instincts that guy has is just so much fun to watch. And yeah, he seems to, like, he had a rough couple of games when he started, right? He seems to be firing on all cylinders, understands what is needed from him in the team, and is fully providing that. I did want to say one more thing about Ousmane Bukari. So I don't think he had an amazing game. He had showed some promise in moments. He connects with Driussi, like on a cross that Driussi heads just a little bit wide at one point. He receives the ball in the box and kind of creates a shot with his left foot out of nothing in the 61st minute. And just like the whip and like power he gets on the ball from just kind of a standing position was pretty impressive. But I want to talk about his defending. So there's a moment I don't remember when this was, but he slide tackles Hani Mukhtar in the box and wins the ball. And then there's another moment wide right, I think in the second half, where he slide tackles someone and, in my opinion, unfairly called for a foul. It was like a really solid tackle. And so like he's not taking over the game. He's not controlling things, but he's being a threat that defenses have to think about, as we saw in that Gallagher goal. And then just how much work he was doing in between these moments. So like, he's engaged defensively. He's putting in tackles. He's working in the press. He's listening to the coaches and like they're giving him instructions and he's adapting. And you heard Josh Wolf in the post-game press conference say that he kind of adjusted the way he was defending throughout the game. So he's like eager to learn, willing to put in the work to do what the team needs him to do. And so even in games where he doesn't score, where he doesn't create any magic in the attacking half, he's not a passenger. He's contributing in other areas of the field and just like really engaged in being a part of the team and making the team better. And that's like, you can't ask for more from a DP. But yeah, so Austin gets the win. Again, this is big. They're going to need a lot of big ones though. including, I think if we're looking at the rest of the schedule, this coming Saturday is a big one too.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, yeah, we didn't even mention this. So Austin does move up into a playoff spot for the first time in a while. So Austin's now 9th in the West. And so effectively, Austin controls its own destiny, but there's not an easy road because there's a lot of playoff teams left in front of Austin to come.
That's right. Yeah, there's still a lot of work to do, but you like the momentum that this could give, right? Like winning this particular one. All right, anything else, Jeremiah?
No, let's take a break, and then we'll cover a little bit of news and preview Vancouver. Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Moon Tower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire Woods Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space, from lobbying at the local, statewide, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Woods Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and support Austin FC's march to the playoffs. Contact our friends at McGuire Woods Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we are back. We're going to preview the Vancouver match at Q2 on Saturday. But first, let's run through a few pieces of Austin FC news, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I guess the first one is before Austin picked up a win, Austin FC2 picked up a win at 4-3 at home against Colorado at Palmer Field. It was a dramatic one. Colorado took an early lead, but Austin gets 2 goals from CJ Fodre, who now has 4 goals in his last 3 matches, with Jimmy Farkaloon assisting on all those goals. Austin also gets 2 goals from Sebastian Pino, the last one being at the death, which leads to Austin picking up a victory in regular time, which I think everybody was ready for penalty kicks by the time this comes around. So Austin picks up another win. Austin FC2 picks up another win. They're now 10th in the West on points. Still not in a great shape for the playoffs, but they have been playing more consistently lately. And the guys that you want to see things from, the guys who are scoring the goals.
Yeah, that's right. And we talked to David Goss last week a little bit about like the balance in this team of getting results versus getting these young guys minutes. It seems like they're being able to do a little bit of both at this point, better than they were doing early in the season. I still think it maybe brings up a little bit of what we've talked about in the past with CJ Fodre in these games, where a lot of people saying like CJ's too good for this level. He needs to be playing higher up. And I said, CJ needs to go and score 1 million goals and then come back and talk to us about being too good for this league. He's starting to do that now. And some of the goals he's scoring, Jimmy plays a ball, like good crosses, but plays a ball into the box. And CJ just comes and just dominates dudes in the box and heads the ball in. Like that's been quite a few of his most recent goals, which is great that he's doing it, but it doesn't feel like a thing that's replicable in MLS. And so I'm not saying that to say like he's not ready. I'm saying like maybe he's too good for this league at this point. But with the reinforcements made, like I don't know how much time he's going to get on the first team. So it's just one of those tough spots for a young player.
Yeah, but you hope that's a spot that leads a young player to like work hard and develop and like fight for those minutes. And it feels like maybe that's what it is. And luckily, because he's a Generation Adidas guy, like us is not investing a lot in order for him to have that amount of time, right? Like Austin could be patient with him because of his age and because of his contract to see if he's going to develop in the way that can be contributing to the first team or not.
Yeah, and I hope that's the way that the first part of what you said, I hope that's the way CJ is looking at it, because you hear like youth coaches and folks who are involved in developing youth talent. And one thing that I've heard from several different places is the mentality. Like if they don't have the mentality to become a pro, then regardless of how talented they are, it just isn't going to happen. And so this is one of those moments, like, can he endure this tough spot? Can he take it as a challenge and force them to put him on that team, force himself into MLS minutes whenever the time comes, and then be preparing himself so that he is ready for that moment when it comes? Like, I hope that's the way CJ is looking at it, because it is hugely important, more so than the ability. And like Ethan Finley will tell you that. I've heard him, he told us that, and I've heard him say it in other interviews where like, I didn't get here because I was the best at soccer. I got here because I worked harder than everyone else. And I was pretty good at soccer.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely need that part to begin with, but that's not the end of it. How about this? We got a U.S. Soccer Collective ranked all the academies through 25, and Austin was ranked 20th. I'll just read sort of the opening of that. It says, Austin has really struggled to find pro-level talent in their region and will need to add more resources to look beyond their territory to improve. Austin looked like an academy that would be compelling in its first couple years, but has been a steady decline. You could argue San Antonio FC has more intriguing young talent than they do. I don't know how much of academy matches you've managed to watch over the last like year or so, but do you feel like that's fair? That like Austin's part of it, I think, is probably Austin's like building an academy and doesn't have that established, but it doesn't seem like the talent has made the steps forward that we thought maybe it would have, given sort of where the club started up front.
Yeah, I'll say first, like, I don't know what this publication is, and I'm always a little bit wary of people claiming to know a lot about American youth soccer, just because it's kind of hard to know that much about it and to know that much about all these players. That being said, what I'm reading about Austin's academy, like, I agree with everything that was written in their section, and so for Austin's section alone, like, they seem to know quite a bit about what's going on here. And I think they're right that like the talent available here, we haven't seen a lot of like Austin talent come through the system and kind of make it through. Again, it's a short time, a small sample size, but if you look at, they have a list of the top 10 prospects. I'm not familiar with some of the younger guys, but if you look at the older ones, they list Micah Burton, Irvin Torres, Gavin Wolf, Vigo Ortiz, Anthony Deonda, Brian Ariano, Joe Arena. None of these kids are from Austin. They've all come from, some of them from San Antonio, some of them scouted from these like no man land areas that no MLS team has a claim to. And then they've come in, and Austin has played them and developed them for several years in all of these kids, cases, but not like they're not getting any of these high level players from Austin. And we talked about that, like when they started the academy, being a little bit concerned, like FC Dallas has such a huge population to pull from. Just the Dallas Metroplex is much, much larger than Austin. Like there's not an Austin Metroplex. It's, you get out of Austin and that's it. You're out of the city. And in Dallas, you drive for 3 hours and you feel like you never left anything. And so I don't know if that will change over time, but it does seem to be true now. And then one thing I've been told from know some folks who coach for other teams in the city, saying that like the kids and their parents who have been approached or are thinking they might be approached by Austin to come and play for Austin, it seems like the tide is turning a little bit as to how these people are thinking about going to Austin FC, because they've seen enough people from San Antonio FC or from the academies here where, okay, you're the best player at these clubs. We want you to come play for Austin. They come, don't play that much for a year or two, or aren't able to progress them, and then they leave. And then as far as those kids, what's actually going to happen for them next, they would have been better off in some cases staying where they were, being the best player there, yeah, putting together a good highlight reel to get into college, instead coming and sitting on the bench in Austin and kind of losing that advantage that they would have had. The ones who come and make it, yeah, they're in a better spot, but the ones who come and don't get that much time or aren't being able to push into being real contributors on these teams, it puts them in a tough spot. And so I think that's not a new thing for MLS academies, but it's starting to happen here in Austin. So it's going to be a challenge that they're going to have to deal with.
Well, one other piece of news we got today was that Dani Pereira gets another call-up for Venezuela. These are for World Cup qualifiers in CONMEBOL against Bolivia on September 5th and against Uruguay on September 10th. Because there's an international break and there's no Austin game that week, it shouldn't necessarily affect his ability to be ready for Austin, other than if he actually plays on the 10th. It might be questionable whether he's going to also be able to like start for Austin on the 14th. but like Dani playing would also be a good thing for Dani because we haven't seen a lot of that from him with the first team in Venezuela yet.
Yeah, I mean, he came back looking like a man on a mission last time he went and spent some time with Venezuela. So regardless of what happens, hopefully this will be another good experience for him. But yeah, like you said, he didn't play in Copa America with them. And so chances are, like, even if he does play in that game, he's not going to go 90. And so you would think he'd be ready to come back and play a few days later. But either way, yeah, like you said, great news for Dani. Any other news, or are we ready to move on to the preview?
No, let's go ahead and move on and preview the Vancouver match.
All right. So this is just the second time we've played them this year. The last time was early May, I think. Well, what has Vancouver been up to since then?
Vancouver is sitting 6th in the West. They haven't played a match since losing to Pumas in League Cup on August 7th. So they have more time off than Austin's had. They do have a Canadian Championship
kind
match
of luck
midweek.
of the draw. Did they just have a bye?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it doesn't seem like there would be a reason why they wouldn't have played, other than that, because they made it one round further, right? Because they played Pumas, but it was still only a round of 32. So like, it wasn't they had to reschedule matches to account for that. They do have a Canadian Championship match, which is, I guess, Canada's version of the U.S. Open Cup, because they still believe in that kind of tournament, against Pacific FC, who they played July 10th. It looked like they kind of played most of their starters, so maybe it happens again this week, but also they have a lead in the first leg of that tournament, so maybe they don't.
I would imagine they will play the starters just because they've been off for so long.
True.
That, like, you'd think they would want to have those starters get a game under their belts. So I don't know it's going to have too much standing. I think, if anything, playing their starters would probably help them coming into the Austin game, just to shake some of the rust off.
Yeah.
And then it's long enough of a break that it shouldn't affect their legs or anything. It might cut into a day of training or something, but as far as them being tired, I wouldn't expect that to be the case coming into Austin.
Yeah, and I think just like looking at them, like the big difference between the way they play them, Austin plays, is they've got a pretty dangerous front line, which is led by Brian White, who has 12 goals and 2 assists. Ryan Gauld, who I feel like we talk about a lot, who has 9 goals and 8 assists. And then Mfafa Pico, who has 8 goals and 4 assists. So it's they're dangerous in attack. They've been a little bit leaky, on the back line, but not substantially more than Austin. So it feels like a game that could have a few goals in it.
Yeah, Ryan Gauld is still working back from an injury. I don't think he played at all in Leagues Cup and was on the bench for their last game, but didn't go in. I think they're expecting him to be available, but not sure if that means starting or available off the bench or where exactly he's at. But yeah, Brian White is a problem, and I'm hoping that, like, Austin's improved defense, if we can call it that, and like improved ability to kind of defend their own box will limit him a little bit. But I could not remember the first game this year against Vancouver, and I went back and watched the highlights, and it was kind of a wild one. So Vancouver has a very early goal disallowed because of a handball by Fafa Pico, and then later in the game, Alex Ring runs through his back and takes him down in the box to win a ball, and it's not called a penalty. I think in the end, we kind of decided on the show that one was a fair call, but it looked kind of brutal on like in live speed. And so it was kind of a wild game. Austin, I think, had 4 shots total, 1 on target. It was one of those Austin road games. And so I'm hoping that Austin coming into this, the way they've played the last couple of games, which I think will set them up fairly well to play against how Vancouver plays. Especially if you look at after the first goal against Nashville, how Austin was able to get up the wings quite often and kind of get balls to Bukari up that right side, or with those little triangles that like Gallagher, Wolf, and Biru were forming over on that left-hand side. They did quite well after the first goal and into the second half. So Vancouver plays with just a straight up back three, and it's often not a back five. Like, it's not where you have guys dropping back to join as wing backs in the back five. It is a straight up back three. And so oftentimes there will be space to play wide in those areas. So I think that's the thing, that if Austin can do that and kind of force them to answer those questions, then maybe they can get some joy out of it. But they also need to be careful with Vancouver's speed, with Brian White, with Fafa Picault, and then if Gauld plays, his ability to kind of receive a ball, beat one guy, and then spring a pass in behind. That's going to be something they have to be really careful with. Not the same way that LAFC does it, but same result, where you give up the ball in the wrong area, they're going to be behind you really fast.
Do you think Austin changes the lineup a little bit to respond to that? Like, or do you feel like Austin just plays Austin's game? Austin's game being the way Austin's played, maybe against Nashville on that. Like, do we see? I mean, I guess I don't know. I was thinking about center backs. Like, they're all susceptible to speed.
I don't know what changes you make that helps.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, yeah, you could say maybe you drop Hedges and play Väisänen, but like Väisänen's not super fast. He's faster than Hedges, but he's also like, Hedges does a good job of kind of controlling the box with aerial stuff coming in. And so I think you lose that a little bit with Väisänen. You lose some of just that, like, those clutch tackles that Heinz Ike and Hedges are capable of in those moments. And we've seen Heinz Ike be capable of some poor decision making at times, but
missing.
He's also still quite good at kind of saving moments in those areas as well. So yeah, it's with this team, there's never a perfect answer, but like, I don't know what changes you make that really fix any problems that Vancouver is going to cause us. All right. Anything else, Jeremiah, before we wrap up?
No, let's go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. We'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on Twitter at elviajero87, where you can roast me for my John Gallagher takes. And then jbentley_ATX, and then Moon Tower Soccer on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Sign up for our Patreon. We've seen a few more folks trickling in over the last few weeks. We appreciate you greatly. You will get access to ask us silly or serious questions, and then we'll also send you some cool merch. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a review of the Vancouver match, and then cover some Austin FC news, since we're heading into that international break. Until then, I'm Landon Cottom.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Thank for nothing, see you never.
La gente
Oh my God.